Thank you so much. I want to bring in my panel, MSNBC military analyst and Medal of Honor recipient, retired U.S. Army Colonel Jack Jacobs, MSNBC contributor and Washington editor-at-large for The Atlantic, Steve Clemens. Allison Jaslow is the chief of staff for the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, also a former Army captain who served 2 combat deployments in Iraq. Steve, so the headline in the New York Times, I think, mirrors a lot of headlines around the nation that people are waking up to. It said, Trump settles on Afghan strategy, expected to raise troop levels. So as they wake up with that headline and Americans consider that this war has been dragging into its 16th year, what would, let's just say, 3,900 more troops or thousands more troops do, and what won't it do?
Well, what it probably does is it increases the capacity to prevent the Taliban from taking down Kabul. It does not allow you to do what David Petraeus and Stan McChrystal and others did, which was more of a national strategy to try to figure out how to take Afghanistan in a very, very different direction than it is. We've seen the rise of warlordism again. We've seen the increasing influence, not just of India and Pakistan inside Afghanistan, but Iran, particularly in the western part of the country. So it doesn't allow you to really control the country that we used to. It prevents Kabul from falling to forces that come in. And that's a real limitation. We have to ask ourselves, why are we there for that? What is the great strategic purpose in just holding up the government for that end? And I don't know. And one of the things, I was with Petraeus Saturday night, and he paid tribute to Richard Holbrooke, who had been his partner at the State Department. And of course, President Trump has disbanded the special representative for Afghanistan and Pakistan that was designed to try to build civil and social infrastructure inside Afghanistan and take it on a different course. That doesn't exist at this point.
We love the name dropping when it's like I was with Petraeus on Saturday night.
Yeah, but the Holbrooke point.
Yeah, with to the Holbrooke point, I guess. But
there is no Holbrooke today.
One of the things that we just heard from Peter is that the White House is telling him that they don't want this just to be a military option. They're looking also at how diplomacy plays into this. What role can India and Pakistan play? How carefully should we be looking at that, and could that be critical as we look forward to what do we do about this? Steve? Oh,
the sound went out here, friend. I'm sorry.
So I was asking about the second part of this, which is diplomacy, as Peter mentioned, about India and Pakistan, and that the White House doesn't want this to be solely a military strategy.
Well, I think that the big piece of this is that Afghanistan and Pakistan look at, India and Pakistan look at Afghanistan as their playground. They poke each other. It gives them strategic depth. And unless you do find a diplomatic solution that is far more robust than we have right now, there are rumors that that will at least be part of the speech. But what I find interesting is Afghanistan is basically an opium economy. We're spending probably about $15 billion a year right now. If you add about 4,000 troops, that's another $6 billion a year. That's about $21 billion a year. That's larger than the entire GDP of Afghanistan. So to just throw money, just throw troops without a bigger reconciliation piece between India and Pakistan, and anyone that knows that part of the world knows that an easy thing, and just pushing them on a short-term basis, trying to sew their interests together so that they don't continually to destabilize Afghanistan, is something that's going to take more resolve, more diplomatic finesse than anything we've seen from the Trump administration. It reminds kind of what's needed in the North Korea front, too. This administration pushes and pulls partners for maybe a week and then forgets them, and I think that's part of the challenge here, is sort of serious resolve and strategy.
And so much, Colonel Jack, so much money, so many lives have been spent on this war. The U.S. started training troops in that country, that country's security forces, back in 2002. And most of the Afghan military and police are still not at the readiness levels to even hold a stalemate. Most of that fighting is done by special ops, which I think the last number I saw makes up about 7% of Afghan defense and security forces. So what are you looking for tonight, Jack?
Well, the likelihood is that the special operations capability is going to be increased. I've heard numbers between 3,000 and 7,500 additional troops. A lot of those will be special operators, special forces to train indigenous forces there, to take back areas that have been lost to the Taliban, and mobile training teams to also assist. There will also be some ground troops, American conventional troops, principally artillery people, and those who are in the support business. But all that, at the end of the day, might or might not drive our strategy to achieve what we want to. There's an old saying that If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And Stan McChrystal said we have to be in a place like that for decades. We're not going to do that. What's really important to know is what the overall strategy is. Where are we headed, and what's the end game? And I don't think you're going to hear that tonight.
You don't think we're going to hear that tonight, Allison? Nearly 2,400 U.S. troops have been killed in the war in Afghanistan since 2011 so far this year, at a time when, frankly, it's not top of mind for people the way it was back in 2002, 2003. What do you think about sending more troops in, and what are you looking for tonight?
Well, first of all, thank you, Chris, for taking some time to focus on the human sacrifice here. You know, when I saw headlines yesterday, the first thing I thought about was a buddy of mine who has been deployed twice, who said goodbye to his family last month and is in Kabul right now. The fact of the matter is that we actually lost a service member in Afghanistan last week. That death was tied to ISIS, not the Taliban. So I think the soldiers who are going to be hearing the president's speech tonight, the soldiers that are on the ground and deployed, not just in Afghanistan, but also in Iraq, Syria, the ones that are training in Korea today, they want to hear from the president what a clear strategy is. And the only way that they can execute and probably accept, especially a troop increase, is knowing what the goal is and knowing how their role fits into that goal.
How long have your friends, have our friends, neighbors, husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, children been fighting there not knowing why they were there?
You know, I think that it's definitely a personal question. I can speak from my own experience and know that I definitely had times when I was on the ground in Iraq where I was questioning what we were doing there, how long we were going to be there, what the end goal is. I think that there are a lot of people who've been wondering about that with Afghanistan specifically for a number of years. You know, I think that there are a lot of our members who had serious questions about what the last administration was doing in Afghanistan. And so if we are going to launch into our 17th year, if the president is especially going to ask service members who have been carrying a greater burden than any other troops in generations past, with less than 1% of the American population serving in these current wars, well, they definitely deserve clarity on the strategy, and I hope that that's what the president's going to give them tonight.